Welcome to the Media Nerds Podcast. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
And I'm Kenton Larson.
Very sad news this week, Kenton. We lost Paul Reubens.
And Sinead O'Connor.
Oh, and Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah,
that was this week
it was
too.
a bad week. And Tony Bennett wasn't too far before them. I know, it was brutal.
Yeah, that was tough. Well, I mean, it's weird. Like Sinead O'Connor, I don't think that was a natural death necessarily. Right. And that, of course, that was very sad what happened to her and her son in that whole situation.
Yeah, terrible.
But Paul Reubens was a shock because I guess nobody knew he was sick. It was a private battle with cancer. And what I saw, actually, in both cases with Sinead O'Connor and Paul Reubens, was just a huge outpouring from people on TikTok and other social media, just showing how much they loved them. Paul Reubens, just a big part of my childhood. Pee Wee Herman was a huge part of my childhood. Loved that character. I didn't see the first movie in the theater, but I did see Big Top Pee Wee in the theater. I went to see it with my friends when that came out. And, of course, the TV show that everybody loved.
Yeah, I loved all of it. I saw everything in the theater, starting with the first movie. Of course, the morning TV show. I watched every one of those as well. But I think the media got it a bit wrong when they were reporting on his death, when they go, he made children around the world happy. It was like, no. The gag was a meta gag where he was a children's entertainer for adults. Like, that's what he always was. Right? Like he was on Late Night with David Letterman. He wasn't on the Today Show.
I saw those clips. A lot of those kinds of clips are coming up on TikTok. I love seeing them, right? He did some hilarious bits. He was on the dating show. Yes, that was his first appearance as Pee Wee Herman. Was on the dating show as a guy being set up, and he won like a couple. He was on 3 times, and he won the last time he was on. So that's pretty funny. And you're right. But I think that Hollywood tried to sell him as a children's entertainer for a while. I just watched Pee Wee's Big Adventure last night, and it is very much a movie aimed at kids. Like, you can understand the pain of losing your bike, of your bike being stolen, and of course all that other stuff. So there's a lot of like children themed things in there, although it is still also hilarious for adults. It's what's funny is seeing a grown man act like a child, right? That's what's so funny about it.
That's part of what's interesting about Pee Wee Herman is what is his age? Nobody knows. Like, It's unclear. Like, how did he end up where he is? Like, there's no prequel, so you just accept that he is this guy in this circumstance, and it's amazing. Like, I noticed on the Letterman clips, you're like, wow, he really seems like a little kid, and then they zoom in on his face, but then you can kind of see like, oh no, he's an adult. Like, he's got wrinkles in his corners of his eyes and like some stubble, a little stubble when they get close. He's got the makeup on and stuff, you can see. And so that's part of the our willingness to have disbelief and to just accept him as a real thing. And I think that's part of the genius of the character. You know,
that's what definitely see that in the movie. Everybody accepts him for who he is. He's just this weird guy that wears the same suit. He has this weird house. Where does he get his money? Who knows? I don't know. It doesn't seem to have a job. There's all kinds of questions that are never answered, but that's what we love about it. And it is very sad. Now, it's interesting. I haven't seen this. I haven't really been watching a lot of news, but has anybody mentioned his incident, of course, in the theater that happened? That was really seen as kind of a blight on his career or whatever, but there was his arrest and, of course, infamous mugshot and that kind of stuff. That's been talked about.
Oh, yeah. CTV brought it up before anything. I think CTV National News.
All right.
Not where you work, but CTV National News brought it up right away.
One day I hope to be there.
I don't know that it has to be the lead of the story. And I also like to point out, a few people mentioned it to me, and I was like, Fred Willard was caught doing the same thing like 20 years later. And at that point, people were just like, well, whatever you want to do. It
was okay.
In one of those situations, I mean, and I think people don't know that the porn theater was actually something that even Winnipeg had one. And I guess before the internet, that's where people would go to see stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was unheard of.
that kind of stuff to happen there. Yes.
Right. And there's probably worse things that happened in that theater. And so I think that, I'm not excusing that, but at the same time, it was something I think that was kind of its day, except for Fred Willard, where he went into a peep show. Like, remember,
I didn't know that.
We had Dominion News downtown. and they had a little area in the back, restricted area with peep shows where you could watch dirty movies, and that was like 50 years after anybody was even doing that, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. So I think for a guy like Fred Willard, it would have been like something he might have enjoyed as a young man. He was reliving his glory days as a young man.
Well, I didn't know that about Fred Willard, but Paul Reubens, at the time, it was, I think, a more opportunistic police officer and press that took advantage of that and sensationalized that. And I think now people have realized, he was just kind of, it is what it is, and people make mistakes. People go through things. I think it's Paul Reubens. I see it, and I want to call him Pee Wee Herman because, and to me as a kid, he was Pee Wee Herman. Like, I didn't know. His name's really Paul Reubens. He's not really like that. Like, we thought he was really like that because he says in the movie, it even says Pee Wee Herman as himself. So that was like a persona that he did. And he would make, again, like you said, he'd make talk show appearances in that character. But yeah, it's really a roller coaster, his life, right? Up and down, like huge fame, falling down, disgraced at like in that incident that happened, and then back up again. He had lots of work later in his career. They had another Pee Wee special on Netflix a few years back. Remember?
Oh yeah, it was
fantastic. A Christmas special.
That's a great movie. It really is. It's an awesome movie.
And yeah, the character is somewhat ageless. And nobody else could do it. I don't think there's going to be anybody else doing Pee Wee Herman. We're not going to see a Pee Wee anything else. Paul Reubens was Pee Wee Herman, and may rest in peace because we'll never get that again. So, and of course, Sinead O'Connor, I'd forgotten about that one, but I loved her music when I was a teenager.
It's so great. And also somebody who was disgraced, like they share that in common with the.
Well, she ripped up a picture of the Pope.
Right. Yeah, but
I agreed with that one.
But I don't think. I think at the time, I don't remember people saying, "Oh, that's so mean to the Pope" or anything. I think they just saw it as a form of crass self-promotion or something.
Oh, I don't know. I saw that. I was in a room in Quebec. I was on an exchange trip, and I was in rural Quebec at a very Catholic household, and we were watching Saturday Night Live. And she tore up a picture of the Pope, and the entire family went, "Ooh!" They were very upset. They were very upset.
I read about that incident last week. I pulled out my old my Tom Shales book on SNL, the oral history, and Lorne Michaels says, "Oh, she was making a statement that was very important to her, and okay, good for you." Like, he didn't really care. But then there was the director, and the director said he was so angry, not at what she did, but he was angry that she didn't tell anybody. And he's like, just tell me what you're going to. And in fact, she lied to him. She said, I'm going to hold up a picture of starving kids. And she apparently did it in the rehearsal. And she did a bait and switch and then did the Pope during the live thing. So he said he was so angry that she didn't trust him to tell him. So he said two things happened. And he goes, the first thing is he would not push the applause button. He's like, no applause. I'm not. And so he said, so no applause. But they did allow her to come back at the end of the show to wave goodbye with everybody else. And he said on the same show, Tim Robbins was the host, which everybody's forgotten. And Tim Robbins was famously wearing an anti-GE shirt with a GE with an X through it. And so the whole week, they said everyone was like, oh, no, Tim Robbins is going to wear a shirt. What are we going to do? This is terrible. And they're like, could you wear a jacket over it? Could you? And the whole week, they're focused on what's Tim Robbins going to do. And so they said in the last scene, she comes out, she's standing next to Tim Robbins, and nobody even noticed his shirt. Nobody gave a crap. All anybody was talking about was Sinead O'Connor. She basically, he was newsjacking the show. Or hijacking, whatever you want to call it, and she did him one better. So nobody even remembers what Tim Robbins.
That's interesting. Yeah, I forgot he was the host that week. It was anyway, it's very sad that they've gone before their time. Of course, both. She was 56, I think. Very young, and he was 70. Paul Reubens was 70. So very sad that we've lost them. And then we've lost something else to transition into our main topic for today. We've lost Twitter, kind of.
Does Twitter exist, Dan? Let's start there.
Well, I'll start with that. It does not for me because I've actually deleted my Twitter account. I'm no longer on X or whatever you want to call it. I'm done with that. So, but what happened?
Is it called Twitter?
I guess it's called X, right? Is that what it's called now?
I don't know. I think part of what we're dealing with is the confusion about the worst rebrand in history. this could be it.
Oh, I don't know. Remember the Gap? Remember the Gap rebrand? That was pretty bad.
No, what was it?
Oh God, it was a horrible logo, and they went back on it immediately. It was a couple of years ago. But it was like, okay, never mind. Back to the old. It was just Gap. It wasn't the Gap. It was something. It was horrible, and nobody liked it. Anyway, and then there's also, of course, you can't forget New Coke. New Coke was also a bad rebrand.
Right, but normally when you're rebranding something in marketing, it's a carefully planned out process with professionals in place and lots of a rollout involving all hands on deck, loads of stuff. But this was like Elon had a notion on a Saturday night that he would like to change the name of the business that he spent $4 billion on. And it just appears to have, and everybody running around like chickens with their heads cut off trying to make it happen.
Yeah. And by the way, a rebrand also usually incorporates some element of the old brand, like those other two examples I just talked about. We're still using parts of the old brand. This is nothing. This is like getting rid of everything. And what I've read about it, it's like Twitter is one of the most recognizable brands on the planet now because of the iconic bird. It's got such a simple logo. It's been talked about so much. It's been such a part of the global conversation over the years. And he has just run that company into the ground. It has lost all relevance, all what's the word I'm looking for? Just valid, right?
Right.
I don't, you know what I mean? Like it's just if it's all at the whims of this guy, then who cares? And why even be a part of it? If he can just change it whenever he wants and do something stupid like this that everybody else thinks is really stupid, then why even be part of it? That's not why I quit Twitter. I'll tell you why I quit Twitter in a second, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, I have a personal Twitter story to tell too that coincides with this rebrand, which we'll get to in just a second. But some of the stuff that we saw, like they put the X sign up on there, like it was all news that we're taking down the word Twitter, but then they got stopped in the middle of the signage thing because they were blocking. They didn't have a permit to block the street, so they had to stop, and then they started again, and then they got the X up, and now they took it back down because there's so many complaints to the city from nearby residents and stuff for the thing. So it's just sort of a microcosm of how everything.
So they've also become the annoying business in the neighborhood. That's pretty funny, actually. That's justice.
When I see the X, I think, oh yeah, it doesn't exist. To me, that means Twitter doesn't exist, though it might still be called Twitter and not X. It's a little unclear what we're supposed to be calling it.
Well, it's kind of like the Facebook Meta thing, right? That's also very confusing because it is Meta. But they're still calling Facebook and Instagram. So I think that's kind of what he's trying to do is be X, but still have Twitter be Twitter. But everyone's saying it's X. Everyone now is saying it's X. And X, by the way, is very generic, extremely generic. Remember they used to say like brand X when they didn't want to say the other brands. And that's just like, what are you trying to say with the letter X? I just don't get it.
It's like the classic business owner. I like the letter X. So that's what we're going to make all of this. It's what I like. I like this.
That's so let's not do that. A good enough reason. I'm sorry. Not for a platform that has millions of and people have been dropping off the platform like crazy because of this. I'm sure this just added to it, but people were doing that before. Every decision he's made since taking over this company has been a poor one.
Well, Twitter has already died 1,000 deaths since he took it over. That's the funny thing about this, where it's like this happens. Okay, now it's dead. This happens. Oh, now it's dead again. This happens. Now it's dead again. And it just like, and the week before he limited the number of tweets that people could view, which is just absurd. Like if you don't have the blue check mark. Now, I don't know. He's probably taken it back now. But if you have the blue check mark, you can view as many tweets as you want. If you don't have it, there's only so many. And so I maxed out at a certain point. And people were all over saying, we maxed out. We can't read any more tweets. What's going on? And said tweets will not load. Basically, and by the way, this is an advertising-based business where you need people to see tweets. Like in order to have people buy promoted tweets, you need them to be able to see it. So that happened. And here's my story. So I maxed out. The next day, and I'm like, this is terrible. The next day, I opened, and this could have just been a mistake. I still don't know what this was. The next day I open Twitter and I get a message going, you are on 3-day suspension for having violated Twitter's rules. I'm like, what What rules? And so I'm reading the thing, and it doesn't really, like, there's nothing in there that pertains to anything I've done that I can tell. I read through the thing, and it's like, you can't spam people, you can't, whatever it is. It's like, I'm going through the list going, I didn't do any of this. I don't know what this is. But I did the day before make a joke about Elon Musk. So I was like, could this be, did I violate Twitter standards by making a joke about Elon Musk? Maybe it could have been that. So I still don't know. But here's the other thing. So after it says I'm on some kind of suspension, I'm like, let's see how this works. And so I dismiss it. Seems to work the way it always does. See, nothing changed over the 3-day suspension period. So it might have been a mistake. Like maybe everybody got that message. I don't know. It's so confusing. It's impossible to tell. So what were you going to say? You quit Twitter for a reason.
Okay, yeah. I'll just tell you, I had a similar experience like that on TikTok where a video I put up yesterday got a thing that said it violated it was a content violation. What the hell? And it said there was criminal activity going on in this video. And I'm like, it was an unboxing video for my new trivia game. So there's no criminal activity. I bought this on Amazon. And so up at the top corner, it just said, and a little button that said appeal. And it just makes a person look at it is all that is. I think it's something that got flagged by a bot. Some image in there made it look like something, and so they flagged it. And so it's disturbing that they would go ahead and do it automatically without a person looking at it. So I just said appeal, and then within 10 minutes it was back. They put it back, said, "Oh, we saw your appeal, and we put it back because it's fine." So that was weird that happened, but that was a similar experience.
See, I had one of those on TikTok similar to you, but I didn't click appeal. I was like, fine, whatever. I was like. I just like, fine, if you don't want it up there, I won't put it there. But I made a joke about Vladimir Putin. And
they block all that stuff.
And basically about how he always goes, like, if you ask him about anything, he goes, it's a risk. Is the risk. Everything is the risk. Like, right? It's all a big risk. So if you ask him, that's how we respond. So I did a bunch of jokes about that. And they're like, no, like instantly. It was like, this violates the thing.
Well, it's like probably because they're trying to block stuff coming from his side of the
right, but it
war
didn't
or whatever.
Even,
but yeah,
right. It didn't even. It like I don't think it was public for a second.
That's
it was like instantly shot down as something that cannot be on there. I'm like, okay.
So what happened to me on Twitter was basically it had to do with CTV, and I decided when I started working at CTV that I was just going to use the Twitter account for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a place where people could access me. I didn't want them finding my social media, my Facebook. Because there is a bit of an issue with like people, not necessarily bad thing, but people do search out and follow media personalities on social media. Like there's certain people who will like friend me, and when I look at them and I see all these other people who I'm friends with who are also on TV and on the radio, I know this person is like a kind of person who just wants to collect their favorite media people, and I don't usually respond to those. But I wanted to have a place, so I was on Twitter. But basically all I ever did was tweet my articles. I never engaged in discussion. I couldn't really get into arguments with you guys or do anything like I used to do because I was representing CTV and I didn't want to say anything negative about that. So I just kind of would, and I would always forget. I never used Twitter. I took it off my phone. I would just always forget to go on it. TikTok has ruined me for all their social media. It really has, because I've just don't engage in anything else. Very rarely on Instagram. So, but then I wrote an article about this guy who in Winnipeg, people here will know about this issue around the landfill, where a group of Indigenous people were asking for a landfill to be searched in Winnipeg, and they for a while had a blockade going at the other landfill, the main one in our city. And so I got assigned to interview this guy during this whole debacle. There was a guy who drove up to that blockade, dumped a bunch of mulch out on the ground on top of like a mural that they had painted in memory of the people whose lives had been lost. And this idiot drives out there, dumps a bunch of mulch on it because he wasn't able to use the dump that day, and he was pissed off about it. And guess who gets assigned to interview him? This guy. Okay. And I wasn't seeking this out. I got assigned this. Right. This is what happens. Hey, Dan, can you interview this guy? Here's his phone number. See if you can call him. What is it about? Oh, he's the guy who dumped all his crap on the thing. Oh, okay. So then I read like one CTV article about what happened, got the gist of it. I said, okay, well, I'm just going to interview this guy and see what he wants. And I didn't even know, by the way, sometimes they ask me to interview people and that's all I do, and somebody else takes it and writes it up. Sometimes I don't always write it up. So I didn't even know if I was going to write it up. I thought I just had to interview this guy and get his side of the story. So I did that. I interviewed this guy, got his side of the story. He's an idiot. he walked up to these people who are asking for the government to pay for the landfill search that's going to cost $184 million. He walked up to this group of people and said, maybe the indigenous people should pay for it or something. It was just a stupid thing to say to this group of people. And I thought I conveyed that in the article I wrote about it. I wrote a very simple article. I was told to just get it up as quickly as possible, put it up, get this guy's side of the story out there. And then I got a whole bunch of criticism on Twitter. Now, I didn't tweet this article out. Somebody found it, and they found my name on the website, and they linked it to because my CTV account was linked to my Twitter. They found it on there, and they basically started a rant and tagged me in all these little tweets and said, this is horrible reporting. It's not balanced. You didn't challenge him. All this stuff about like how I didn't do a very good job interviewing this guy, and I didn't fill in the rest of the story for all the other stuff that happened around it. So I'm like, yeah, I didn't, but that wasn't really my job that day. I was just assigned to interview this guy and write up his side of the story. And then I got direct messages from a former student on Twitter that was challenging me on this and saying, why aren't you answering these people? And I'm like, I don't need this. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what Twitter is for me. And I'm like, how many people will actually even tweet? Like, my Twitter following is basically defunct student accounts. It is really like most of the people who follow me on Twitter. I apologize to anybody who listens to this podcast who also followed me. You guys are awesome. But mostly it's student accounts that do not use Twitter anymore because we made them use it when they were in our program. So I didn't really care. Most of the people I know on social media, I'm also connected to on Facebook and other platforms. And so I can talk to them there. And there was just nothing left for me on Twitter. I'm like, I'm just going to delete it. And it felt good. It really did feel good to delete that. And then the next day was the announcement of X. And I'm like, good. I did it right in time.
You know, it only takes one bad experience on social media to kind of for the bloom to fall off the rose. It doesn't take a lot. It wasn't even that bad of an experience, but I thought, what if, like, the next time this happens, it's going to be so much worse, and I just do not want to deal with this. I'm not that kind of a journalist. I'm not the guy who's going on Twitter and arguing about people over the ethics of this crap. I'm just a guy doing a job. That's all I'm trying to do. Sorry, go ahead. Right. No, I was just going to say on Instagram, which I'm barely not even on anymore, though I check it like once a day or something, but there was Drake giving a big speech underneath a giant statue of himself about the on stage, about the importance of humility or something. I'm probably misstating it now, right? I'm probably misstating it now. So right, and so I said, kids always understand the importance of humility, and wherever you go, make sure everyone understands how humble you are under a giant statue of yourself, especially, or something like that. I made some joke, and I was like, I really don't. I don't dislike Drake. I don't particularly, love his music or anything, but I was like, it's just funny, just amusing or whatever. And the abuse started rolling in like my comment got a lot of likes. I mean, I thought it was nothing. I mean, I leave so many jokes online. It's like I get surprised when anybody notices anything. And so it's the likes came in. I was like, oh, okay, all right. So I made a good joke. Then the abuse started rolling in over the rest of the week, and it was just like, you're stupid. You're a dope. You're a moron. Drake understands what he's doing or something. Like it's just 10,000 of those things. And I was like, I don't necessarily like, yeah, okay, he understands what he's doing. That's not. I was telling a joke. I was making a joke. I wasn't like. I wasn't putting.
We're not actually criticizing
down.
Drake. Right?
No.
Pointing out the irony in the situation, which is awesome.
But who cares? What does he care? He's got $1 billion and he's having a good time. So what does he care about my stupid comment, about my joke or whatever? But that to me, like, so every time I was checking Instagram, it's just another one. Just, and here, you'll like this. And one guy was like, you're a dipshit. And so I'm like, okay. So I look at him, hospitality management in Peru. I was like, nothing's more hospitable than calling strangers online dipshit.
Yeah.
Right?
That's hilarious.
So you're just like, oh my God. So yeah, so it doesn't take a lot to kind of find yourself online in that set of circumstances. And that's why I think why people say it's bad for mental health and everything else. I mean, I'm at an age where it doesn't really, nothing bothers me. Go ahead and call me dipshit if you like.
All right, dipshit. Well, I think we're at a tipping point for social media. So we're going to see, I mean, Twitter is becoming less and less relevant, even more so now. And I already thought that. Facebook is, I mean, I've not used it very much over the last couple of years. We were talking before we started recording about the issue around Bill C-18, which we talked about in the podcast before, and how you can't share news articles. Nobody can share news on Facebook anymore, and Google, of course. So people are going to stop using it for that reason. They might use it for other reasons, but are going to stop using it for that reason. It's the same thing with Twitter. They're going to stop using it for the reason they used to use it for, and they'll develop new habits. That thing about the limited tweets, that's a horrible idea, because that gives you an excuse to click away and go on another social media app. You're just going to go over to Instagram or TikTok instead of being on Twitter. So that is awful. So they're just driving customers away with that policy. That's a horrible, horrible idea.
And he may have changed it since, and who knows, but it's like he's on a kamikaze mission. And part of me just thinks, did he pay all this money to shut it down? Like, is that his whole plan? Like, it's so poorly done. And you can just sort of see like the seams on this thing snapping like one by one. Oh, his new CEO is Linda Yaccarino from formerly of NBC. And she tweeted, or whatever it's called now, Z did, that Twitter is going to be everything. It's going to be the place where you go to watch sports or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things she lists is and where you'll do your banking. And I was like, nobody is going to give Elon Musk their banking information. When you see what he's doing there, why would anybody do that? I don't know. I don't even think, like, I'd be afraid to put my credit card number in there to run an ad campaign on behalf of a client even, because you don't know what might change or what's likely to happen if you do that. I think it's scary.
Yeah, and it's, you know what happens when you try to appeal to everyone, Kenton?
You appeal to no one.
To no one, yeah. That's what's happening. No one's going to care. You can't do everything. It's going to die. Facebook, I mean, this whole thing about Facebook is in Canada only, so it might not affect it globally, but I think it is going to affect the way people use Facebook in Canada and Google in Canada. You can no longer Google the news in Canada, so you're going to have to find another way to get the news when you want to find out what's happening. And that's not a need that's going to go away. Like, people are all of a sudden, forget it. I don't care about it because it's not on Google. No. And by the way, I've taken Google. I'm trying to go all Bing. I am making an effort here to go all Bing. So we'll see how that works. I'll report back on that later on. I got rid of my Google. Well, I still have to have my Chrome browser because I've got so much of my fucking information saved in there. But I've gotten rid of Google app. I use the Bing app, and I do have the whatever it is on the whatever the browser, Edge, Microsoft Edge browser on my phone that I'm trying to use. But it is clumsy. Anyway.
One more thing. While we're talking about clumsy, there was a big initial rush to get onto Threads, the Facebook version of Twitter. And by the way, it's been 4 weeks of utter boredom, of nothing happening there. I think the only thing that happened, the most fun thing, was people going, okay, Elon, goodbye, and then going some other place. And I think after that enthusiasm wore off, there hasn't really been much there. And I think I read somewhere that Threads users have dropped off by 60% since the initial enthusiasm of everybody jumping on there. Yeah. So it's not proving, and we all have to remind ourselves, we don't like Zuckerberg either. Or like, oh yeah, we don't like him either. Oh yeah, 4 weeks into Threads.
They're all jerks. They're all jerks.
That's sort of the problem we're dealing with, right?
Yeah. Right.
And if we all just deleted our social media on the same day, the world might be a better place.
That's true. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to wrap things up, but let's talk before we go about some recommendations. I will start. I finally started, because the second season came out this week, but I finally started watching the first season of Good Omens on Prime.
Oh,
and
yes.
Boy, is that a delightful show.
It is great.
I was sleeping on it. It's so funny. It's damn it, I'm going to forget their names, of course. David Tennant and Michael Sheen. There you go. And they're an angel and a demon, and it's about their friendship throughout time, and it's just a delightful story, very funny, and it plays around with Christian mythology a lot, which I really like. So I'm quite enjoying that one. Yeah,
it's very well made, and I've seen season 1. Season 2 launched last week.
Yeah,
and so I'm going to get to it soon. I had a bunch of shows that I'm sort of just finishing off here, but I love Good Omens. I love that show, and I'm sort of saving the new season. It's only 6 episodes, I think, the new season.
Yeah, it's very short, so it's like a British thing. So yeah,
I'm sort of saving it as a little treasure for when I can enjoy it without. I don't want to rush through it. I want to savor it a little bit because it's so good. All right,
what do you got?
I'm going to recommend something for people who enjoyed Squid Game. I was attuned to this reality TV show from South Korea on Netflix. I read a New York Times article about, wow, there's so much great TV coming out of South Korea, and with the writers' strike, Netflix is going all in on some of this stuff. And the only reality show that was on there was a show called Physical 100. Physical 100, and it's basically Squid Game except nobody dies, but it's Squid Game with 100 buff people, some of who are well known in South Korea, and others who are online influencers or whatever else. And you're like, how good can this be? But they actually do a great job of doing a non-violent show where people are competing in Squid Game-like competition. And even the very first one is, all right, all 100 of you have to just hang from your arms, and we'll rank you 100, like number 1 to 100 based on who can hang on the longest and who can let go the first. And so they eliminate people pretty quickly, but it's interesting to see, like, you've got bobsledders, you've got kickboxers, you've got bodybuilders, you've got all different cyclists from all different realms, and it's interesting to watch them compete. And I have to say, the refreshing part of the show is because they're from Korea, everybody is respectful to each other. So they compete, but then it's kind of like, today you bested me. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of
Oh, that's cool. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes. And so Physical 100 is what it's called. And it is like eating candy. You're going to watch those episodes like nothing. They'll fly by, and they're good fun.
Sounds a little bit like Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. You remember that one from the 90s? That was an old Japanese show, I think. So
yes, and this has similar tones to that, but this is not. This is, as I say, this is almost refreshingly it's Squid Game style, but almost refreshingly kind of low key. For a reality show.
You don't want it that high key because it's Squid Game and people die.
Well, imagine Big Brother, where people were like, yes, you got the better of me. Never.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. It's only screw you. And
Americans would hate that. Americans love the drama. They would love it. Yeah, that's funny. All right. We got to get going. Thank you very much for that recommendations. That's going to do it for this episode of The Media Nerds. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
I'm Kenton Larson. Don't let the door hit you on the ass.